So Magnus played this game against Hu Yifan in 2008, and Magnus had the white pieces here. And so we see this opening. Magnus takes back with the queen, and we're going to see both sides will eventually fianchetto their bishops, and both fianchetto bishops are monsters. They're both so good aiming at the king side, both very good pieces here. And black plays f5, gaining some space. Magnus castles on the king side and gains some space in the center. And Magnus has a space advantage. And look at the engine right now. There are only a few moves that don't lead to a bad position for black. So it can be so hard to play when your opponent has the space advantage. Like black has to play a very select few rook moves. She's got to play either rook to h6 or rook to g6. Otherwise, it's like totally like bad already for black. So Yifan plays rook to g6, which is a solid choice, the second best move, but it's just so difficult to play when your opponent has the space advantage. So Magnus gets the knight in. Yifan maneuvers her knight backward. Magnus improves yet another piece, getting the rook to the center. And we see some more pieces coming. Black is starting an attack against the white king, but h3 pretty much shuts all that down pretty nicely. And the knight comes in and is now attacking the rook and the bishop. And this is a good square for the knight. I'm not going to lie. This is a nice square for the knight. But it doesn't like actually accomplish all that much. Like not every attack is necessarily good because h3 again like is a complete brick wall. You know, you're not going to sacrifice the queen and then mate. That'd be crazy. The queen's in front of the rook. The queen's aiming at nothing, and so the rook is aiming at nothing. The knight is well placed, but there's no like actual threats. So it's actually +2 for Magnus here. It's +2 for white, even though he's getting attacked. Hey Josiah, welcome. Glad you could join us. So yeah, white is actually better, even though he's getting attacked. And so Magnus plays this move. He sacrifices the rook. Is Magnus secretly stockfish? This move is unbelievable, but it is the top engine move in this position. Yeah, Magnus knows the bishop somehow is more important to keep on the board than the rook in this position. So he saves the bishop. So Yifan happily takes the rook and is now up the exchange. And yet the engine loves white in this position, +2.7, even though Magnus is down the exchange, which is quite incredible. So Yifan brings the rook to g6. And now tell me in the chat, everybody, would you be afraid of queen takes h3 here? That's what she's threatening to do. Would this move scare you? Would you like panic and try to do something about it? Or would you think it's okay and try to go on with your plan? Okay, I see some variety of answers in the chat. Exactly. I love that answer. It's not really threatening anything. Exactly. That's what I was hoping. That's what I wanted someone. That's the right answer. Yeah. It is not actually threatening anything. Like black can take this pawn, but then everything's defended. Black has like no threats. You know, she would have no way to follow up after taking this pawn on h3. The rook defends the bishop defends g2, and so everything is just protected for white. And if black, you know, doubles the rook and the queen on the h file, white could easily just run the king away and escape. So it's totally fine. So Magnus instead plays this move. He continues his plan. He's undermining the f5 pawn, threatening now to take it because it's going to have no defender. Yifan trades off a pair of pieces, and Magnus does win the f5 pawn. And now Magnus is attacking the queen. The rook defends this. Queen goes back. Magnus improves the queen. And starts pushing on the king side with pawn to g4, improves the queen again, pins the knight. Black gets out of the pin. And notice how patient Magnus is being here. He's just making small, improving moves. There's no need to do everything at once. There's no need to force some kind of crazy attack when it's not there yet. You know, when you have a good position, you can just be patient and just improve your pieces one at a time. So just getting the king to a nicer spot. And now rook to f2. This is interesting. Is this an improving move? What do you guys think? Would you consider rook to f2 as an improving move?
Is Magnus white?
Yeah, Magnus is white.
I'd say it's a good move just because it's Magnus.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That is not a bad way to judge it. Right, exactly. That's the right answer. Yep, you can move the rook to more squares. Yep, it improves the rook's mobility. Here, it had very, very few options. It's blocked too much by the pawn. But here, along the second rank, it's got way more flexibility, and that's going to be useful. So, yeah, it's a good move, definitely. Good improving move to give the rook more scope to move around. Yep, good job. Now, this is an interesting moment. Yifan is apparently giving Magnus the pawn on d6. Magnus has the queen and the knight that can capture. Um, so he can take this with the queen. Would you take the free pawn here, though, if you had the white pieces?
No, because the queen isn't the best, and there's a really good queen in the middle, and a
Yeah,
great
that's
knight also.
right. That's a good thought. Yeah, Magnus has a huge positional advantage. And so liquidating would kind of get rid of that to some extent.
I didn't see the pawn was hanging, so I thought you were just asking if you wanted to sack your queen.
Oh, oh no. Yeah, I mean that'd be an easy question, I guess. That'd be wild. Yeah, what do y'all think? Would you take the pawn? There's actually, yeah, Magnus is down a pawn here, so it might be tempting for him to want to recoup the material situation, but he does have a vastly superior position. And remember that when someone is cramped, like Black is here, trades can help them to free their position. So a queen trade would actually help Black here. And there's also a tactical reason that this is bad, because ultimately taking the pawn on d6 would not even win a pawn ultimately for white. There you go. Coach Joe has found it. Knight takes f4. There you go. Well done. Yeah, so if that's the move that was played, if queen takes, then queen takes, knight takes, then knight takes on f4 with a discovered attack against this knight. And if we take, by the way, it's actually even better for Black. So that's not even the best move. Best move is to move the rook over. So Black wins back a pawn on f4 and frees her position. This rook is now active. Got rid of the queens. It's much better now for Black than it used to be. Engine says it's about equal now. So White should not take the pawn because of that tactic. Again, queen takes, and then we've lined up a discovery. So Magnus was quite right to not take. Queen to d3 is the move. And then we see knight to c7, pawn goes up, and Magnus plays bishop to e5, improving the piece, trades the pawn, moves the queen back to attack the knight. Knight goes back. And now, finally, Magnus's superior position finally translates into a tactic for him to win material. He was really dominant, and the engine loved his position the whole way. Like, even when he sacrificed a rook, like, I'm pretty sure it was just really good for white the whole time. But he wins the exchange, still has a pretty nice position. Black is like super cramped even now. Magnus plays this move. He's threatening maybe some ideas here at some point. Black goes back. And we see some patience from Magnus. He takes on g6. Yifan plays queen to g4. You want to stay aggressive even when you're losing, so threatening the rook and threatening to take the pawn on h4. Magnus goes back with the queen, and Yifan does not take on h4. Why do you think she didn't take the pawn on h4? She could have taken a free pawn here. Kind of looks
Maybe
like that was the
because
threat.
of the queen trade if the queen blocks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the queen trade would force a simplification into a position that's just winning for white because white has a dominant bishop and is up a pawn. So this would be good for Magnus. So black did not want to go into that. Yeah, you're exactly right. It was the queen trade. That's the reason. So she didn't want to do that. Magnus encourages Yifan to take on h4 with this move. And so she does. Queen trade does happen. And now we have a very nice position, getting the rook back to the open file. And this is going to be a nice cleanup job for Magnus. Up a pawn with a crushing position, good activity advantage. The rook heads into this outpost. Magnus takes another pawn, and black resigns here in this position. So I want y'all to remember the importance of patience and improving all of your pieces methodically in chess when you have time to do so, like Magnus did here, and to make sure you evaluate whether an attack is actually going anywhere before you get afraid of it. Because it's easy and natural to be afraid when your opponent starts attacking you, but some attacks are not as scary as they look. You know, sometimes you can easily neutralize your opponent's attacking pieces and make them just look silly. So don't immediately react with fear when your opponent attacks you. Look for a way to stop them and prove them wrong. And finally, when in doubt, sacrifice the rook. And you'll be basically Magnus.
Yeah,
That was crazy.
that's yeah, that's good.